Good evening. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Wendell Board of Commissioners. Thank you all for being here and welcome you to our meeting. Tonight, we're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Anna Grace Maynor. You want to come step to the podium, Anna Grace? I want to tell you a little bit about her. Anna Grace Maynor started kindergarten at Wendell Creative Arts and Science Magnet Elementary School, and now she's a 5th grader there. Anna Grace was selected to be a Wendell Elementary School Safety Patrol member this year and has served on the Wendell Elementary School Student Council also. She is polite, thoughtful, and a very kind young lady. Anna Grace always has a smile on her face and treats everyone with respect. She serves as an excellent example for all students at Wendell Elementary School and meets their soar expectations consistently in her words, deeds, and daily interactions with adults and peers. She's an exemplary student and a wonderful person who will accomplish great things in the future. We are very proud of you here in Wendell, and I want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, you want to all stand up?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our invocation tonight is from the Wendell Council of Churches, Mr. Errol Briggerman. Thank you for being with us tonight, Mr. Briggerman. We always depend on you.
Yeah, thank you. I would like, if I could, take a moment to thank everyone.
Sure.
The next 2 weeks, we'll be doing our fall food drive where we put the bags out, and it's kind of interesting. From the spring to now, we're going to put out about 150 more bags. That's how many more new homes that have folks in them. And we've just been so blessed with the response of our community as this has grown over the last 4 years. So we just thank everybody for their commitment to helping our 3 food pantries with this. So let us pray.
All the things that y'all do there.
Good. Thank you. Lord, we just thank you for this evening. We are so honored, Lord, to be in your presence. We just pray, Lord, for our mayor and our city council as they make decisions for our community, that it will honor you and praise you. We just ask you, Lord, to watch over our city, watch over our community, and give us opportunities, Lord, to witness for you. We just pray now for this evening. We just ask this in your precious name. Amen.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I have one.
Yes, sir.
Add item 10B to our agenda. It'll be Resolution 17-2017, opposition land acquisition.
All right. We have a motion to approve the adjusted agenda.
Motion to approve.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
We have no one signed up for public comment tonight. Item number 3 is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 4 is the recognition of Mr. Ray Hennett for receiving the 2017, oh my Lord, Amphibian, got it, Award for Lifetime Achievement in Historic Preservation. So Ray, can you come up to the podium? We're so proud of you. And I want to just tell you a little bit about this. The Amphibian Award recognizes outstanding dedication and commitment to excellence in historic preservation in Wake County. The name Amphibian was inspired by classical design elements seen on Wake County buildings, including the State Capitol Dome in Raleigh. From adaptive reuse of commercial properties to town plans and residential rehabilitation to lifetime achievement, winners of Capital Area Preservation's Amphibian Awards have all made notable contributions to the preservation of Wake County's architectural landscape. Since 1994, Capital Area Preservation's Amphibian Awards have been recognized as the best of the best in Wake County in historic preservation. And September 25th, 2017, our own Ray Hennett received a Lifetime Achievement Award for Historic Preservation. It's the Amphibian Award from Capital Area Preservation, and we're very proud of him for that. And so I told everyone I was going to bring him in here and recognize him and embarrass him a little bit, because we're real proud of you, Ray, and appreciate everything that you've done for Wendell and for Wake County. And the list of things that he's done is too long to read in here tonight, but it's very long, and he's very humble and very modest. He would never tell you about it, but we appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you very much. I enjoy it.
Item number 5 is the recognition of Wendell Magnet Elementary School, Rob Jenkins. Can you come up to the podium, Mr. Jenkins? Mr. Jenkins teaches drama at Wendell Creative Arts and Science Magnet Elementary School. He does a great job balancing patience and necessary firmness when working with our students. He not only teaches the students about drama objectives, but works hard to ensure that whatever content the students are learning in the classroom is integrated into the lessons they have. Mr. Jenkins ensures that the students do a lot of practice with managing impulsiveness, following the SOAR rules, and being respectful. It's obvious Mr. Jenkins focuses first on building relationships with kids, which is one of the many reasons he's so loved. We're lucky to have such a wonderful male role model in our building. This is from the principal at Wendell Elementary School. So you are very loved. I happened to notice you in the carpool line one day, and the children really loved you. You had the patience of a saint, and I really appreciate what you were doing out there with them. So thank you very much for all the things you do for our kids in Wendell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Is there
it.
anything you'd like to say?
We are always looking for volunteers. Come read with the kid. Come do some math. Come be part of your community at our school. Thank you.
You won't regret it. It's a great place out there. Thank you.
And if you don't, we'll come find you, and you'll have to do drama games. Thank you.
Item number 6 is a public hearing for annexation of 93.29 acres of property located in Wendell Falls and identified by PIN numbers 177308073, 1764716160, and 1774116521.
Thank you, Mayor, for reading those for the record. This
I'm thorough.
As stated, this is an annexation request for 3 parcels that are within the Wendell Falls Plan Unit Development. Tonight, we're asking this board to hold a public hearing, consider taking action on these, and we do have a draft ordinance that could be approved as that action. So Nash Wendell Falls LLC is the applicant in this case. These are 3 pieces that, again, they are included within the plan unit development that was previously approved by this board, just hadn't previously been annexed in. And so as they're moving forward, looking at future plans, starting to work on some commercial sides, they want to just go ahead and get this annexed in so it's not a hindrance later on. The town clerk has certified the sufficiency of the submitted petition. There, highlighted in yellow, you just see the 3 tracks. So one of them is along the new road they're creating, Wendell Valley Boulevard. One of them is along Taylor Road, and one is out. It doesn't currently have road frontage, but this is a piece that they purchased from the Anderson family. So the tract along Wendell Valley Boulevard that I mentioned is about 22 acres. That is planned for future commercial development. The other 2 pieces are planned for future residential developments. Both water and sewer are nearby, but not currently located within the areas. So the developer would be extending utilities into these as they look to develop them. In terms of tax implications, currently they are undeveloped, valued at about $1.3 million in their undeveloped state. So using our current tax rate of 49 cents, annexation of them while in the undeveloped state would result in approximately $6,500 in tax revenue for the town. This figure, of course, will go up as they're being developed. We did an evaluation of how big the average residential lots were in Wendell Falls, what the average lot value was, which was almost $300,000 per lot. And so if you use those figures, the calculation that staff did showed that the annexation area would result in a little over $600,000 in tax revenue for the town once it was all developed. And that figure would actually be higher since one of those is planned to be commercial rather than residential. Of course, this would require service from police and public works, but they're already in the area, serving the existing Wendell Falls subdivision. That's all I have for this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And Newland had a conflict and wasn't able to send their representative, but I told them I could probably handle any questions.
Okay. Does anyone have a question? Gentlemen? Public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to speak for or against the annexation of, I'm not going to read the numbers again, step forward. All right. Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. What's y'all's pleasure?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the attached ordinance for annexation of 93.29 acres of property located in Wendell Falls and identified by the previously stated PIN numbers.
Anyone want to read them?
You did a good job.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to annex the previously stated PIN numbers, adopt the ordinance and annex the previously stated numbers. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all very much. Item number 7 is a public hearing and discussion on an application by the Greater North Carolina Jurisdiction Church of God in Christ Incorporated to amend a CMX conditional district located at 1609 Wendell Boulevard. Mr. Birdmark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. For this public hearing, as stated, is for an amendment to an existing conditional district that is just south of Edgemont Landing along Wendell Boulevard at 1609 Wendell Boulevard. We are asking the board to hold this public hearing open as we're still waiting to finalize the traffic impact analysis that's being done. The applicant, as stated, is the Greater North Carolina Jurisdiction Church of God in Christ. What I'd like to do is just give a brief background and then allow the applicant to give their presentation, and then I'll come back and fill in any details that are needed. But as stated, this was something that had been approved previously about a year ago for approximately 44 acres. At that time, it was broken into essentially 5 tracts with the mixture of development. It incorporated, it was focused on being kind of a retirement community, but it did incorporate a small number of single-family dwellings and a commercial tract along the front. So in the meantime, they knew that they were going to have to look at prospective developers. So they've been talking to some groups, and as a result, have brought together a revised plan to kind of incorporate some of the ideas that were brought to them by the Seer Stone retirement community. To kind of enhance this plan and make it better fit into that active adult and retirement development model. And we gave a link to an example retirement community in Cary called Seer Stone. So we do have members of Steve Janowski, who's the engineer, one of the engineers working on this project. Also have Bill Sears with the Seer Stone group, an architect that helped design the Seer Stone development. And we have, I believe, members of the Church of God in Christ here as well. And I believe that Bill and and Steve Janowski have some material they'd like to present to the board.
See your pointer?
Sure. So that will progress it.
Does it progress? I'm Steve Janowski with Rivers and Associates. This project's been before the board, it's been approved before the board, and probably one of the things that we're doing right now is, as a result of making requests, and Mr. Sears coming aboard as a part of the team, and we basically have revised what we call Tract C. It used to be Tract C, D, and E. A and B are basically the same. The revision of that tract basically incorporated a continuing care retirement community, which was sort of the root of the basis of the foundation, even of what we were doing before. If you remember correctly, we had a assisted living area that was on that particular site, but the mix was a little bit different. Had single-family homes, had duplexes that were there, had some apartments that were there. What Mr. Sears did with his experience came to us and helped shape this so that it could be a successful project and be successfully marketed in order to bring investors in that would see a real opportunity here. So he's got those revisions and those numbers pulled together so that they make some sense. As a result of that, most of it has stayed in terms of just the general flow. From Edgemont Landing, that road still continues through and connects. It's shifted a little bit further west than it had before. The water and sewer utilities still have a 8-inch line coming through that serving. We've got the sanitary sewer that exists already going through the property, running to the northeast and also to the east. There's a 52-foot right-of-way that's proposed to interconnect to the east, so that interconnection is there. We cross there's actually a blue line stream that you can see that separates it. We cross that in two separate locations, and appreciate that. There we go, great, appreciate that. That's the blue line stream, and there's also another one that goes, a little piece of it goes up towards the north. It's not much, it eventually wanes from being a blue line stream, but it is at this point in time. So we would cross that. Part of the vision that you'll see is when we did the multifamily, we saw an opportunity to try to bring everybody close to the water features, and that's really what's driving this. And what we'll try to do is enhance our stormwater features so that it becomes kind of an amenity to the development in itself. You'll see that we've got two 92 unit 4-story apartment buildings, and what we've done is we've set them up so that you can basically have access one to another, some courtyard areas in the rear, and the idea is to begin to have a pedestrian paths along with inviting the community in, and so we basically have brought Edgemont Landing through. In order to get into the facility, we'll have a right turn in, a right turn out. If you go down Wendell Boulevard towards the west, we'll be installing a U-turn in order to get some of that traffic back towards the Wendell area. The major traffic patterns would be moving up at 97 down Edgemont Landing, Osprey Point. There'll be some U-turns that will be made. Right now, there'll be some reconfiguration of that free flow lane in order to just, from a safety perspective, we would look at that. We've got a traffic impact analysis was done, and it was a draft analysis. It's being finalized this week. But basically, everything that we're doing is level of service B, which is an excellent level of service. The traffic impact is really no more traffic than we had previously. And actually, the trips per day for the CCRC are less than the trips that were projected as standard single family and standard multifamily. You know, at that time, everything was market rate that was in there. So I'd like to turn this over to Bill Sears, and just to really give you some insight into the CCRC.
Thanks, Steve. Somebody's going to have to help me manipulate this. I'm not.
So that just progresses at the arrow.
That.
Yeah, right goes forward.
Right goes forward.
Yep.
Let's start with what this is all about. It's all about the impact of environment on health and longevity. Seer Stone is a concept. It's not a place. It is an evolving recognition of the impact of environment on how we live and how healthy we are and how comfortable we are in our lifestyle as we age in place. In working with the Greater NC Jurisdiction Church of God, what we're trying to do is to recognize some of the things that we've learned in the last 20 years about the things that really do make life better, make it more comfortable for people, and make it easier for them to live in its environment for a much longer period of time, and to become part of the community that we lost sight of historically at the time of the Industrial Revolution. I've got to tell you the story of the caveman. The legacy of the caveman, as it was explained to me in one of the last year's leading age national conferences on aging, it's all about the impact of environment on who we are, and it's about our biological connection. One of the things that we were told in a forum that I think fits what we're doing tonight is the fact that very early on as Homo sapiens, and this, depending on what you call a Homo sapien, that's anywhere from 30,000 years ago to 300,000 years ago, we found out that we could live inside of a cave a whole lot safer and longer than we could live outside of a cave. We also found out that we could live longer and better if there was somebody in that cave with us. That's how the concept of community evolved. One of the critical things that we found out that separated us from a lot of other species is that we found out that that cave had to be near water and it had to be near food. These things, somehow or another, we remembered historically up until the Industrial Revolution. When we got to the Industrial Revolution, all of a sudden, here comes the train, here comes the automobile, here comes the plane, here comes everything that basically makes it easy for us to forget about our connection. And so all of a sudden, we turn into suburban sprawl. We turn into stress problems. We turn into psychopaths. We turn into a whole lot of things that we wouldn't be if we remembered the garden. And so what we've done in the last 20 years from the standpoint of society is to start to recognize the fact that the garden is the thing that's most important thing about what we're doing. The thing that pleases me is that what we're doing with the jurisdiction Church of God is bringing back the concept of garden to adult environments. This thing is all about intergenerational communication. It's all about the aspect of basically not only celebrating the garden, but being in the garden. One of the things that we're finding out is that boundaries are one of our biggest challenges from the standpoint of aging, the removal of boundaries. So what we've done in this particular case is to put together a project that makes boundaries disappear. It's a matter of proximity and it's a matter of opportunity. So a lot of the things that Steve has described to you are not only intended for the people that actually live on the premises and will have health care in place, it's also designed for the communities around it, the greater community of Wendell, and I could go on to the state of North Carolina, to the world. The opportunity to live close together, the proximity aspect, is one of the things that gives people who are, I call them, people who are empty nesters, gives them a sense of comfort, a sense of security, because they know there's somebody close enough to help them if they need help. So having said that, I won't dwell on a lot of the things that are there. The question was asked of me by one of the planning board members, I think, as to the architecture and the concern for the architectural style. The one thing that I will tell you is that in a case like this, it's really not about architecture. It's about the compatibility of the facilities and the site to meet both the indoor and outdoor needs of community. The outdoor, we're finding out from the Japanese, who told us this a long time ago, is just as important as the interior in terms of designing spaces that subliminally make you feel better and give you opportunities to be better than you would if those outside communities didn't exist. So Seer Stone is one of those examples that is kind of an emerging trend in terms of aging in place that I am pleased to be a part of with the help of the NC Jurisdiction Church of God. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But in a nutshell, this is all about the future of aging in place in a way that is both healthy and safe and gives you an opportunity to live longer.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Birdmark?
I did have a little bit of,
Okay.
yeah, a little bit. I wanted them to give the big picture and the vision before I bore people with some of the details we want to just make sure we mention. So they kind of gave you a sense of how it was changing, but I want to give you some numbers, just remind you that this is a conditional district, so we can deviate from our normal standards, but it's supposed to be a kind of a creative trade-off between us and the applicant. They already showed where it is, but just for reference, along Wendell Boulevard, Edgemont Landing is behind it, near the intersection 97. I did want to point out the proposed amendments and kind of what this stood for from a number standpoint. So the total number of residential units would be increasing from 202 to 300. There would be a small number of single-family lots that would no longer be part of the project. There were 26, and those have been removed. The number of townhomes was increasing from 36 to 42 and designed as two-story quadruplexes rather than duplexes. The number of independent senior apartments would be increasing from 40 units to 184, so that's really the biggest change here, is the number of senior apartments. And the number of assisted living units decreased slightly from 100 to 74. The amount of open space is going up slightly, and the clubhouse that they mentioned, and I can show on a map if needed, is increasing quite a bit from just being a little over 6,000 square feet to being 45,000 square feet with kitchen, dining facilities, recreational space, meeting rooms, a health clinic, and to serve administrative functions. So that is really expanding quite a bit to both serve this community and, at least as they presented at the planning board meeting, to also offer opportunities to bring the rest of the remaining Wendell community into this community. The only changes to the conditions were removing the reference to single-family dwellings as they are no longer being proposed, and then staff recommended adding one condition, which was 13, which dealt with having a sheltered area for the mail kiosks due to this being an age-targeted community. I won't go through all those conditions because those are the only changes to them, but I did want to point those out. The planning board at their meeting did vote in favor of this request, and staff is also in favor of this request. To give you an idea of those trade-offs, what are they when we talk about a conditional district, including trade-offs? So in terms of improvements, it's extra open space, it's a paved greenway trail through the site, or in some places it might be a boardwalk due to environmental reasons. They're showing a pedestrian bridge across that blue line stream. They're excluding certain uses along Wendell Boulevard, and that was negotiated at the last approval. They included some recessed garage requirements, have said there won't be vinyl material allowed on any of the multifamily products, some wider streets and safer pedestrian crossings, and what they're asking for, in a sense, is to have this approval be the kind of conditional approval rather than requiring a separate special use process, which would normally be required for the multifamily, but we're really getting all the details here that we would get there. A slightly longer time frame to obtain construction permits, and then a few modifications to the design standards for multifamily that's mainly oriented around that population. When you have that elderly population, you don't want raised elevations. You don't necessarily want those porches and stoops. So with that said, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a few. Does this updated plan include any retail?
So there is a commercial tract along the very front, which I believe was shown as Tract B, if I'm remembering right. I'll bring that up for you. So that hasn't changed. That was there before, and it's still there now, so essentially that tract. So yes, that would be some type of commercial in nature.
But we're not talking about buildings with commercial on the first floor, and the apartment buildings are going to be apartments on all floors, not,
Correct.
Retail on the ground floor and then apartments above.
Correct.
Okay. The exclusion of undesirable uses along Wendell Boulevard, what was excluded? Or what was the request for being excluded?
So it was, let me go to that condition. Okay, if I'm gonna remember which condition that was in here. 9? I don't have a 9. Excellent. And I probably shouldn't have said undesired. So one of them, I think, was storage and warehousing. I think there was vehicle repair, and then because of the church being located right there next to it, we also had the civic institutional for this lot, since you already had the presence of a prominent church right there. And let me just make sure I haven't missed anything. Excluded uses included manufacturing, wholesale storage, and civic institutional.
Okay. And the townhomes will be exterior access, right? Like for the front door from the parking lot, each individual unit would be accessed from the outside?
I'm going to turn to the applicant to That's correct.
And the senior living apartments would be interior access, interior hallway corridors?
I'm assuming that's also correct. Yes.
Okay. And those numbers line up the same, it was 184, and all of those would be interior access?
That's correct. 92 on one side, 92 on the other side.
Okay.
How many stories were the apartments planned to be?
4 stories now.
Is it a gated community?
No.
So the commercial would be open to the public?
I think they want,
Outside of this development, I mean.
yes.
And, Mr. Birdmark, what are we wanting, I know we're waiting to hear back from the traffic and impact analysis. What are we looking to hear from regarding, what is this going to tell us?
This is required for any development that is going to have more than 150 peak trips. We just want to make sure this isn't going to be creating traffic issues and what improvements may be required. So it'll be also looked at by NCDOT. So they're going to be looking at, turn lanes in. He talked about doing a U-turn. At one time, NCDOT had talked about possibly left over, but this is going to tell us what's really needed to serve the site in terms of, access into the site. TIAs can also sometimes look at nearby intersections for signal information, but that probably only happens with larger developments. But mainly turn lanes and access points.
Have you had any contact with DOT regarding, I know in the past we discussed this being kind of a tough spot with proximity to a stoplight and not being able to cross, there's no median access or access from the heading east, I guess.
Right. I mean, we have had discussions with them in the past, but they're going to want to see that TA just like we are.
Okay.
So they'll have comments once they look at it.
David, if I could just address a little bit
Sure, please.
with the TIA. The majority of the traffic associated with the TIA on this particular development really is that B. It's, we've gone from, market rates about 10 trips per day for a single family, 6 trips per day for multifamily, and then that's now less than 3 with the CCRC as a part of, and so it has dropped from the last time that we've done it. The level of service is B. One of the things that the main reason I've asked for I didn't want a directive in there to try to have a leftover into this development because of if you see it's what, 8, 10, 12 feet, and just the retaining walls and the construction. I'm not saying that somebody that would develop that corner may not want that, but the reality is even when we make those turns, either via 97, Edgemont Landing back to Osprey, back into the development as an entry point for single family, or those U-turn moves that would come in from the west that would come back towards, there would definitely be some improvements that would be required, be minor, and maybe a yield sign is what basically they're saying for that. Right now there's a free flow lane coming off of 97. The possibility of even having, as we go to the construction drawings, even just a separated median so you can have a weaving pattern that would, for those particular vehicles that would later just move over to make that right turn. And then obviously what David referred to too is as you move out and you want to go into town, we would, part of this development, no matter what we did, would have a U-turn that would come back in order to get them eastbound again. But the levels of service are projected at B regardless, and so, if we could have a vote tonight, I would appreciate that. I think that it's important right now. Mr. Sears is going to a convention with the idea of just really marketing this plan. It may not be totally necessary that we have your stamp of approval for that particular meeting, but that's kind of what our intention was to begin with. And so we just haven't I just had assumed that the draft TIA would be acceptable. And we are making some revisions to it, so it's, which is basically just pulling out that left turn so it's not sitting up on the shelf as a mandate to put in a left turn that's in there. So we want to actually show that levels of service without that. So I'll just leave that to the discretion of the board. I appreciate it.
And speaking of just, we looked this last time, I know along that back, I'll just call the northern border, which kind of abuts to Edgemont Landing, there were a lot of single-family dwellings there. How much of us, now we're looking at having more, looks like these quadruplexes kind of in the northeast corner, and then it looks like just parking, slash kind of apartments there. How much of a buffer, especially in that northeast corner, is there between these quadruplexes and the?
More than is required, like, for example, do you see the two darker strips by the quadruplexes?
Yes, sir.
That's a 25-foot option A buffer. And then you'll see a little section that's kind of a thick line as you move onto the other side of the ditch. Same thing there. Then you've got a strip that's parallel to the entryway for the multifamily. That's a 10-foot. And then you'll see a 25-foot on the other side of that as it buffers the quadruplex. So, and then there's some natural vegetation in and around the quadruplexes on the east side, and obviously around the blue line stream.
Okay.
And there is a fence incorporated into the buffer as well, and that's noted on the plan, although the plan doesn't specify the exact height of that fence, so that is one thing that kind of came up is, if there was a concern about that, you could say, oh, well, this is a 6-foot fence or 8-foot fence, just to be clear, but there is a fence incorporated as well.
And this is the fence that you referenced in regards to the certain type of material that was in one of those conditions?
Cannot be wood.
Okay. That's right. Thank you.
Any more?
To you, and maybe the applicant on this, but there was a statement made, market rate versus CCRC and the effects on traffic. Can you explain what market rate we're discussing, what CCRC means, and how that affects traffic?
So yeah, CCRC, if I remember correctly, is complete care retirement community, something along those lines, but that just speaks to an age-targeted retirement community, generally 55 and up. So this has been, I think they're really just making the distinction between just your standard, where it's open to any age, compared to your age-restricted, you're going to have less traffic impact, less trips generated from that more elderly population, but.
Yeah, if I might, one of the things that I didn't explain really is a severe shortage of housing opportunity for baby boomers in this country. One of the things that we have not seen coming down the road are 79 million people that all of a sudden are basically in the retirement market in one phase or another, starting at 55 and going up to what was 87 or 90. What we're finding out now is that 90 is no longer an expectation of the end of life. Within the next 20 years, the life expectancy of people in this country will be approaching 130, just simply because of changes in medical technology and pharmaceuticals and the things that we can do to in essence, live longer and live healthier. So what we're trying to do is to accommodate a market that has been very severely under-recognized for a long period of time. And this particular community, just so that you'll know why it's sized the way it is designed to kind of meet the minimum requirements of what is called financial stability. You've got to have about 300 units in a community like this. These things basically are age restricted at 55. Their health care regulated through the Department of Insurance at age 62. And these combinations basically represent a market that there's a strong demand for, and what this church is trying to do is to accommodate people that are more average in terms of income. And there are many, many ways that we can do that through different types of programs. There are leasing programs, there are equity programs, there are rental programs, all sorts of programs that will fit this community quite well. And just another thing that I think is important for everybody to understand is a community like this, I've already done a preliminary cost estimate in terms of what its tax value would be. Between $58 and $70 million is what the estimated build out of this project would be in terms of its benefit to the community. So having said that, if there are any more questions related to that sort of thing, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Can you explain, I'll give it one more time, market rate versus CCRC and how that affects traffic?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the terminology of market rate is. These communities are structured communities. As a matter of fact, if it's a continuing care retirement community, it's actually a licensed community.
All I was going to say was, market rate to me was what we presented to begin with. We were going to sell those to buyers. There was not an age restriction the last time we came before. So the habits of the general public are much more prolific in terms of the number of trips per day as the entry that an Institute of Traffic Engineer manual puts out. So when you have a senior citizens or retirement community, that pattern is almost a third of the patterns of, and so maybe a poor choice of word to use market rate, but in essence, if we were selling something to the public and it had a pattern in terms of moving from townhouses to apartments to assisted living as a part of that, then you would expect those apartments to have six trips per day versus 2.5 trips per day. You would expect a single family to have 10 trips per day versus a townhouse having a little over 6 trips per day. So that's what that was all about.
One of the other things that we're finding in terms of trends of the industry, though, it's also a greater recognition of what technology is going to do for us in the future. The Uber car trend is going to very much decrease the traffic flow, making these communities basically self-serving from the standpoint of having facilities on site instead of off-site also tends to reduce traffic. So all of these things are emerging trends that are going to minimize traffic for communities such as this one.
Follow-up. I've heard age-restricted, age-targeted. In my mind, those have two different meanings. Is this going to be an age-restricted complex? That is, someone checks to ensure a certain age? Is this an age-targeted, which in my mind means we are targeting a certain demographic but are open to more than that?
Now, this facility is intended to be age-restricted. Children under 18 would not be a part of this population whatsoever. One of the things that we want to do, though, in terms of making it multi-generational, is to offer on-site amenities that would attract children, because what we're finding out is that the people that will live in these communities are great mentors for younger children, and the younger children are also great stimuli for a more active and healthy lifestyle.
So I heard under 18 not allowed, but 45.
Age restricted is a legal definition that basically restricts the market to 55 years or older for one of the adults living in any complex. You can have a younger wife or you can have a younger husband, but one of the two has to be 55 or older, and no children under 18 can live in the premises taken on the visit.
And that's policed by the management agency? Who is that?
Well, that's actually, that's determined by federal regulation and the real estate markets as a part of the covenants.
Can you help me with the federal regulation piece, why the federal government gets to dictate to y'all who you can put in there?
The details I'm not familiar with. I can assure you that this type of community will not allow anyone under the age of 55 with children under 18. That's the best distinction I can give you. As far as the state of North Carolina is concerned, if for the portion of the community that becomes continuing care, which the assisted living and skilled nursing will be on this site, is very much regulated by the Commissioner of Insurance.
So is that, is it because there's federal subsidies tied to the project, or due to the certification of the project?
Not federal subsidies.
Can I get you to speak into the mic? They can't hear you.
Beg pardon. Does this help?
Yes.
We're not talking about federal subsidies. We're just talking about federal definitions in terms of age restricted. A 55 age restricted community has to meet certain criteria from the standpoint of real estate marketing and from the standpoint of how it is defined.
So just so I'm completely clear, it's y'all's intent to there's age restriction and the other various things that you highlighted in your presentation to market this to private sector investors for private capital to build this project?
Well, there are different ways to assemble this project in a manner that will attract the kind of community that I think the planning department had when they recommended approval to you. Rental products generally would be built and managed by large entities. There can be equity components of this product that can own portions of it, and there can be entrance fee components. The most traditional form of product right now is an entrance fee product. Seer Stone is one of the first products of its type that actually offered to the retirement community the opportunity for an entrance fee to allow you into the site to be a 100% refundable entrance fee. As my dad said, and my mom, for whom I designed Seer Stone, the one thing that I'm not going to allow in retirement is for someone to come in and liquidate my estate. And so what we have done with this particular project for the jurisdiction church is to make sure that the estates are protected, that dignity is protected, that lifestyle is not encumbered, and that opportunities exist for multi-generational activity.
Anything else?
And when you said that you wanted to make sure that the property wouldn't let somewhere down the road be liquidated, you mean something like what's happened at the Sir Walter Raleigh, where it's been come in and sold and the seniors living there sort of have to move out? Is that what you mean by that?
No, what I'm talking about is a community that is large enough to be sustaining from the standpoint of its ability to attract enough capital to maintain its existence long term.
Okay.
The 300 number is basically just a minimum size from the standpoint of your ability to be long-term financially stable. And about 25% of that has to be health care, just so you'll know how we came up with those ratios for a normal population, and that's what we're targeting in order to be multi-generational.
I'm going to ask a more, I guess, direct question. So outside of the health care, which is obviously covered through some form of health care reimbursement, but in the townhomes and the apartments, we're looking at private funds and funds from those individuals. Do you see any funds coming from outside of private funds and funds of those individuals?
There's a possibility that there would be funding sources that would help this project become accessible to a larger part of it, what I would call a senior population, for lack of a better word. And trust me, senior is really not a very popular word now in terms of the adult population. It's fast becoming a derogatory word because age is no longer defined chronologically. A 60-year-old person 20 years ago is not the 60-year-old person of tomorrow in terms of health, in terms of capability, in terms of anything else. So we're trying to come up with different ways of classifying capabilities as we mature or age in place. But defining them as seniors is not going to be a popular way in the future.
So outside of the funds of the individuals living in the facility and outside of the funds that you and others gain through the private market and fundraising and investors, do you see any other types of funds coming in to fund this project?
Not unless they are related to some sort of an affiliation for philanthropic purposes, and you always have that opportunity. And the one other thing that I would point out is in a facility such as this, the healthcare facilities are closed bed facilities, so they only can accommodate the people that live within the community. Okay.
All right, the question? Public hearing's now open. Anyone wishes to speak for or against this project, come up, state your name and address, please, for me.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Pellis.
I live at 5943 Cooper's Hawk Trail in Edgemont Landing. It was just over a year ago, I stood right here. The new digs are nice, I like it. And we talked about a plan that was put forth, and there was little concerns, but no major objections to that plan. Overall, it was a good plan. And no one's really talked about the fact that we've already voted on that plan, and now we're having a change to that plan. This new plan is not anywhere near as good as the old plan, not from a homeowner standpoint and not from a single-family standpoint. Currently, in the current plan that had been approved up until what will get voted on tonight, there were buffer zones and open space between houses and then the units that are directly behind. There were also there was a great transition from single family to some more single family, and then the more commercial aspects of this, apartments and whatever the community aspects, all the amenities that they have, those were over the creek through a little buffer area, and it kind of flowed really well. It went along with what has been approved that Edgemont Landing is becoming and what is currently there. Now we're being touted that we get a larger buffer zone, which is correct. The old buffer was anywhere from 10 to 20 feet. Now we have a 25-foot buffer zone, but no natural space. According to the plan, after the 25 feet, there is a structure. That's this room. That's pretty small. 25 does seem large until you actually look at 25 feet. We talked about the senior apartments being 4 stories tall, that being right next to single-family housing. It's a little off. And then we talk about we've got now parking lots next to those single-family units also, and that doesn't preserve what the original plan did. We also, now I got myself lost. Look at there. The other thing, what it feels like as a homeowner, honestly, is it feels like a bait and switch. We had a plan, it seemed good. It was still a 55 and older type community, and from an Edgemont Landing standpoint, it was going to be good for us. Now I'm not so sure, and we have some concerns. So I thank you for your time and appreciate it.
Anyone else?
My name is Luke Duggan. I'm the Edgemont Landing Homeowners Association president, and I'd like to echo the comments made by Mr. Pellis. It does feel like a bait and switch. It does feel like we're at the car lot and moving on to another vehicle than what we came for. I have concerns about the safety of our community and the extra traffic there. I heard a lot about Osprey Landing, and that goes through the heart of our community. The extra exit there going to Wendell Boulevard would be wonderful, but if that brings more traffic through our community that has lots of small kids and lots of bus stops, as you know, on Highway 97, there was an accident recently, actually a couple years ago, with a small child getting hit on that road. So we have concerns. And also on 97, there's the hill as you're coming around, and I feel like the extra traffic there is just going to make that a little more cumbersome, a little bit more hard to see. And aesthetically pleasing. I'm not sure about 4-story buildings and looking out of our front doors. Right now we see nice, beautiful trees. I feel like the original plan would still offer some of that and offer more of the same. And our community just has concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ann Stewart, Hollybrook Road. This just seems to have been danced around to me, and I need to be sure. Number one, what hand does the government really have to play in this? Because I am a senior citizen, and I'm proud of it. I'm glad I lived this long. But anyway, one of these days I might want to move into one, but I want to know exactly what I'm moving into, because I would prefer to be with friends that I've had forever. So Do you buy the, can you? Uh-huh.
Would you want to move into a four-story
No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
we're not gonna do all that.
Even Sunset Beach won't
I know.
have 4
Ms. Stewart,
stories.
you finish your comments, because this is your
Okay,
time.
but also another little problem here. He said other entities may help with the rent or affordability of these. I want that clarified pretty well before you jump. And churches generally are tax-free. How does this play on their owning this? Will we really get taxes? I think that needs to be delved into since it's sponsored by a church. And I know that churches do not have to pay tax at this point. So that's a problem for me. And I want, are any of them going to be condos that you would buy your apartment and have it as your own? I have a friend who lives in a retirement community, and they buy their own condo, so therefore it's theirs, period. And then when you die, you will it to somebody or sell it to somebody else, and it keeps on going, perpetuates. But I really want to know what it is going to turn out to be financially. Is it a place that your mothers eventually would want to, or fathers, to move into? Would there be a security there? And so please don't jump before you check out all these. We did jump at one and we lost money on it, tax-wise and everything in the past. So please give this some more consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Frank Basha. I live at 5947 Cooper Salk Trail. I'm Mr. Lutz, we had the question about the buffer zone. I'm that quadruple on the very top right. My house is the house behind that. And back with the old plan, Pat Reedy had wrote to Matt, my neighbor, he said that in his estimation it would be a minimum of 97 feet between my house and the, at the time it was a duplex. And now it's 75 feet, so it has shrunk down because it's 50 feet from the back of my house to the property line and then only 25 feet from the buffer that they're showing to that building. I mean, that's going to be like, right, you know, 2-story. It's not going to do too much for my property value. And also the fence, Pat Reedy had mentioned that the fence would be 8 feet tall. And I'm just requesting if they're going to put that in, that they put it in before they start construction. And, you know, just for like a sound buffer and keep some of the dirt from coming into our backyards. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Sir, would you like to say something? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's okay. I just wanted to preserve her time and keep some decorum. Anyone else? All right, I believe we're going to leave this public hearing open, waiting for a traffic study. There's no other questions. No one else wants to speak?
Get a motion to that.
I need a motion to leave it open.
Is there a date certain to bring it back?
Is there, Mr. Birdmark, is there a date certain to bring it back?
Our first meeting in November should be plenty of time, and they're saying that the traffic study should be done this week, and that'll give us plenty of time to evaluate it.
I don't have my calendar.
I'll bring it up. November 13th.
So I need a motion to keep it open until November 13th.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to leave the public hearing open until November the 13th.
Okay. A motion to keep the public hearing open until November 13th. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Item number 8 is a public hearing on a proposed text amendment for Chapter 7 of the UDO as it relates to open space requirements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, we're asking you to hold a public hearing tonight for a text amendment. This was really more staff-initiated, related to changes to open space requirements in Chapter 7 of the UDO, and consider taking action. You have a draft ordinance that could be adopted if you were in favor of these changes, or you could approve with changes or place this on another agenda for further discussion. In anticipation of some of the future townhomes and apartment developments, we did an evaluation of how our current open space regulations would impact these types of projects. This is not related to the previous item. It just kind of happenstance that they ended up coinciding in terms of public hearings. So during this evaluation, we have identified two areas for potential improvement, in our opinion. The first one dealt with open space types. Right now, Section 7.4 breaks open space into active versus passive. 75% of your open space that's required to be dedicated at the time of development can be passive, meaning it can really just be raw land that you didn't touch. It does have to be accessible, so you have to have a minimum amount of road frontage, but otherwise you don't have to improve it or change it in any way. And then at least 25% of the required open space dedication must be for active recreation. This can be things like playgrounds, ball fields, tennis courts, and so forth. And those just provide additional recreational opportunities outside of our park. And we are in favor of these two types of categories in general, but when we looked at Wake Forest open space standards, it kind of highlighted another form that you could kind of look at as improved passive open space. They use the just terminology of park space, and these are areas that are maintained. They're largely grass. They'll have additional plantings, maybe a trail, a bench, but it's really an area just for people to congregate. It could be it could have an open field that people could use for different purposes, but it's not a kind of programmed area to play basketball or volleyball or a playground or something of that nature. So under our current regulations, there's really no incentive to create that kind of space. Either it has to be active recreation and it has to really be a programmed function, or it can just be passive and you don't have to do anything to it. So some developers might just choose to create those kinds of spaces just because they see it as an asset to their development, but there's not really a requirement to create anything like that. And there's not a real incentive unless they're looking at kind of more of a long-term financial incentive if it's a big project. So what we're looking at doing is trying to create an incentive to create that type of space, because otherwise we think it's unlikely that we'll get it. So what we're proposing is to amend 7.4A to reclassify the open space types as passive open space, which would be unimproved, versus park space, which is improved. And this new park space category would include both active recreation and this improved park space that Wake Forest has. So this would create a more practical standard for developers to achieve in terms of the active recreational space, but it would give that incentive to create these park spaces that we don't have an incentive for right now. So as proposed, 75% would still be required as passive, or up to that amount could be passive or unimproved, and at least 25% would be the park space. So those numbers haven't really changed, but how that park space category is categorized and defined is what's changing. Of that improved open space, that park space, 1/3 of the area must be fully comprised of the active recreational space. So that'll be your playgrounds, your ball courts, your tennis courts, or things of that nature. And then the remainder could be this improved park space that, again, would be maintained, would have some nice amenities in it, but wouldn't necessarily be as programmed. And there are certain minimum amenities that would be tied to that improved park space that would be specified. So you have within your report amended language. I did want to show some pictured examples of what you could kind of see as some park spaces. They don't have to be a really wide median quad like in this example, but you can see an area here that has an open field. You have additional trees. You have some seating areas that are probably a little hard to make out, but there's on either side of this, there's I think 6 benches on either side of this. And it's just an area that people can congregate within and use for different functions. Here's another example from more of a street level. And here's an example that shows both features of the improved open space. So you have a large 1 acre area that is again, there's no structured sport there, but you have an open field that can be used for different festivals or that could be used for just kids that want to play, but it has trails that go within it, it has additional landscaping, it has seating areas and things of that nature. And then next to it, or kind of within this block, then you have a programmed playground of about 18,000 square feet adjacent to it. I wanted to give you some figures so you could kind of just see what this change would mean from a numeric standpoint. So you can see for different subdivision sizes ranging from 50 to 300 single-family lots, how much open space would be required to be dedicated, how much would be right now active versus passive, or as proposed, passive versus improved, and then I showed how much of that improved would be active, or as well. Well, actually, that's not inclusive. So if you look at the 300 single-family lot example, it'd be 9 acres would be passive. You'd have 2 acres of this improved park space, and then 1 acre of active recreational space. And I wanted to give you an idea of how much space does it really take if you're really fully using that space for active purposes. So a basketball court's only about 3,000 square feet. Playground can really vary quite a bit, so it's hard to say with that. But a single tennis court, 7,200 square feet or 0.16 acres. A double tennis court, 13,000 square feet or 0.3 acres. So you can, with an acre of land, you can actually fit quite a bit from an active standpoint of program activities on it. So we included the language for how that would change to 7.4, highlighted in red. Stating that it must be primarily grass, properly maintained, contain the minimum number of amenities described below. And we wanted to include some language to our greenways. Right now, we give basically credit for active recreation for greenways if you construct them, if they fall within easements that are essentially shown on our open space plan. But we wanted to broaden that language a little bit to say, or which could reasonably connect to a planned greenway shown in the adopted plan. Because even if it's not that main trunk line, if there's a reasonable expectation that it could connect to that, I think we want to try to encourage that as much as possible. We also wanted to clarify that indoor recreational facilities, including but not limited to indoor pools or fitness centers, or even permitted rooftop amenities can also count towards open space requirements. And that gets even more important when you start to talk about multifamily developments. So the minimum amenities you can see talk to public seating, supplemental tree plantings, trash receptacles, bicycle parking, paved walkways. So they'll have a rate. We purposely did not go very aggressive on that rate, because if you have a really small little park area, you don't necessarily need a trash can at every one of those if it's just some really 3,000 square foot area along a corner. And then we give example language for active recreational, just so someone can see how it would plan out for a 100-lot subdivision. Would you like me to go into the second change, or would you like to take any questions on this first?
Let's do them one at a time. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Can you go back to the chart? Help me understand subdivision size here. Is the 50 single-family lots, is that up to 50, or that's the requirement once they get to 50?
That's the requirement at 50. The open space dedication requirement is based on number of bedrooms. So, and with an assumption of 3.5 bedrooms per house. So those numbers are based on exactly 50 homes with 3.5 bedrooms.
Okay, so if I build a subdivision with 75 homes,
then it would be.
Would it fall under the 50 or the 100? Or
these are just examples. These are just examples.
Okay. Would it basically be based upon, when you say it's based upon the number of bedrooms, if a developer came in and said, I want to build this many houses, would it be, for lack of a better term, prorated to that exact number of houses, or are we talking about a spread, or is that something that we come up with later?
So whenever they submit their development plan, they're going to have to tell us exactly how many dwellings it is. We've generally just gone off, unless it's something that is, for example, age restricted, where maybe it's not only going to be no more than 2 bedrooms. We've just gone on the assumption that it's 3.5 bedrooms, and we based off the number of dwellings shown on their plat. And then we calculate the amount of acreage based on that.
Does the requirement going up, does that trip at a certain number of bedrooms, not the 3.5, but the total for the size of the neighborhood? What I'm getting at here is the amount of passive or active or total or whatever, what causes it to go up? The fact that you trip over 50 or the fact that you add one more house no matter how many houses you have?
So it's not going to be every 50 or 100 or even every 5. This is just example of if you had 50. But if you have 55, there's a specific number for that. If you have 61, there's a specific number for that.
Okay, thank you. So there's nothing to disincentivize somebody from building a 300-unit subdivision. They say, well, we're only going to do 299 so that we don't have to hit.
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Mr. Birdmark, what were Wake Forest's percentages when you said you looked at their passive, active kind of open space?
Theirs,
they break it down.
Yeah, theirs was the same in terms of 75% passive, 25% or park space improved. Of their park space improved, we used the number of 35%. Of that is the active recreation of that improved park space. Theirs was slightly lower. I can't remember if it was 25% or 30%. That just felt a little bit low to me because we're already, in a sense, making, in some ways, a little bit of a reduction in the amount of active,
Sure.
with the intent of trying to get this other type of space.
Have we had issues with pushback from developers on this, or is this something you guys are being proactive about?
Yes and no. If you look at how much active you have to have with our current regulation, so 300 single-family lots, and you would be required right now 3 acres of active open space. That's kind of like the next phase of Edgemont Landings. 3 acres, if it's all truly 100% programmed active, is an enormous amount of active open space. Because they had a greenway trail running through it, they got credit for that greenway trail easement, and so it wasn't really a big impact to them. If they hadn't had that, I think you would have already heard this coming up before you. And the other item is, right now, if someone plops a playground down on a lot, generally it's not like that playground makes up the exact boundaries of that lot. There's an area surrounding it, and do you just count that whole lot they proposed, even though the playground really only takes up half of the lot as truly being active? So it's kind of this gray area. This makes it much more defined of this is how much you need, and the rest of it can be this just park space.
Thank you.
Shall I move on to the next item? So the second item deals specifically with multifamily units. So again, we're thinking, even though Wendell Falls wouldn't be subject to this because they fall under the PUD, there could be other multifamily developments that might crop up around it as they start to do some of their own. So our current dedication requirement for multifamily development is 500 square feet per bedroom with an assumption of 2 bedrooms per unit. And this, may work well for 1 or 2 or 2-story apartments, a more suburban setting. But if we start to get really more dense urban apartments, we see this as becoming a problem and a disincentive to have apartments. So to kind of illustrate that point, I used an example of a Bainbridge apartment complex off of Six Forks Road. And I had an example of that, and you can see on the screen there. And let me flip back to my numbers for a second. This is 266 units within 4 4-story buildings on about 10 acres of land. I'm not saying we want this all over Wendell, but as we continue to grow and then we have some urban areas that could be much closer to our downtown, or maybe over, by Wendell Falls where they kind of have their concentrations, I don't think this is beyond the realm of possibility by any means. And on using this as an example, we looked at, well, okay, if this development came and just was plopped down in Wendell, how much open space would be required for this development? And the answer was 6.1 acres on a 10.4 acre site. So that number kind of surprised me when I saw that. That's more than half the site. I think that'd be very difficult to justify. And I'm not saying that this site couldn't use a little bit more green space. I think it could. But even if you took away one of those buildings and reduced that number by 25%, I still think the amount of open space would be quite a lot for a more urban apartment setting. We looked at Greystone at Widewaters, which is in Knightdale, for a more suburban example. We had that as attachment B, And on that example, our regulations would require 7.62 acres of the total site, which is a little over 24 acres, to be dedicated as open space to accommodate those 332 units. So that's about a third of the site for with 2 acres of active open space. So in order to, and we still felt like that was a little high. So in order to amend the town's open space dedication rules to encourage market rate multifamily dwellings, what we're suggesting is to change that dedication requirement for multifamily dwellings to 500 square feet per unit instead of per bedroom. Now, some people might question, well, they could always pay a fee in lieu, and that's true, but still the dedication amount should be reasonable and desirable to us. In some of these areas, if you're in an urban area, you're not going to want a third of the site being taken up by vacant land. That's high dollar, valuable land, and you're trying to create a walkable urban environment. You don't want so much of the site to be just left open. That's less tax base for us, and that's just not conducive to the type of environment you're trying to create in that kind of more urban area. So in the Bainbridge example, if you use the open fee in lieu of option for the entire amount required, granted they probably wouldn't ask for everything, but for the entire amount required, it'd be a little over $2 million, or over $8,400 per unit. So even if you made the proposed change that we're discussing to make it 500 square feet per unit rather than per bedroom, that's still a little over $1 million. And again, they wouldn't likely be asking to get out of all of it by any means. These calculations use the post-development land value per section 7.6. So those post-development land values work pretty well for single family, but when you get into multifamily, those land values get so high that it makes the fee in lieu quite significant. Also, it's kind of difficult right now, the way that you have to do an appraiser has to make a calculation of what that post-development land value would be. That's pretty easy for single-family development. We have a lot of it for multifamily development. There's not an easy way to find a good comparable in our area. So that's another reason why we're proposing to make it just a more of a flat rate that I'll get into, a flat fee in lieu of open space dedication, rather than having it based on that appraisal. So what we're proposing in terms of a flat rate figure for these multifamily developments is $2,500. In order to kind of get to that figure, we looked at the average post-development value, land value per square foot for all residential properties in the last 5 years, and then we multiplied that figure by the proposed 500 square feet of open space required per multifamily unit, which is what we're proposing. And so using that, we came to $2,459, and we just rounded it up to $2,500 for simplicity. This is, and I swear I did not rig this to make that happen, but $2,500 is actually what Knightdale uses for their fee in lieu of open space, and ideally we would add this to our fee schedule if all these changes are being made by the town board, rather than having it within the UDO itself. And then we would just reference it in section 7.6. So that's what we've done in the draft language with the changes shown in red. Also in the changes in red, we're really just showing the amount per unit type, 1,750 square feet per single family, 1,000 per townhome, rather than having it, just because administratively it's very burdensome to try to then track after the fact how many bedrooms they truly had. And you would no longer need this dedication calculation section at all if we made this change. And here you just see the payment in lieu of open space, the amended language shown in there to apply to the multifamily developments. And we did want to make it clear that that excludes townhomes. A lot of times you don't think of townhomes actually as multifamily, but the way our use table works, it treats them as such, but it wouldn't apply to the townhomes. So those are the changes for the second item. If you have to take any questions you may have.
At least once a week, my neighbor tells me that a couple of neighborhood kids walk into his driveway and ask if they can please go retrieve their soccer ball, football, frisbee, whatever, out of his backyard, because there's no room to, stretch out and run, or do anything like that, even in the backyard of, the houses in my neighborhood, which, I think are on generously sized lots. I think it's a great idea, and I didn't realize how much open space was really utilized this way. until the final few lots in my neighborhood were starting to be developed, because before they were being developed, they were just mowed grass. It wasn't, you know, a playground, it wasn't anything like that. But that's where all the kids would go and play. They go kick a football, they go do this and do that. And now that there's, you know, those final few lots are being built on, you know, they're swinging a baseball bat in the backyard of a, you know, 1/3 to half-acre lot, and that doesn't really work. Wendell Falls is doing a great job of incorporating these kind of spaces. I was up there last week, and there were two, you know, I don't know if they were teenagers or tweens or whatever you call them, but they walked up to the big grassy area right there where that barn is and had a football, and they tried their best to kick it all the way out of the grass and couldn't do it. And, you know, it didn't end up in anybody's backyard. It didn't hit anybody's car. I think this is great. The other part of that I really like is that this gives developers, builders another way to make use of space that, you know, might not be able to be used any other kind of way. It has always kind of irked me that, you know, I grew up on a farm. I grew up playing around in the woods, but I still don't consider woods with briars and, you know, underbrush and everything else open space, because you're not really able to utilize it for anything, for any sort of creative play for kids or adults, really. I'm not going to go traipsing through this open space if it's full of briars and bushes and everything else. And so I think just having open grass where you can have a picnic or a community yard sale or any of that kind of stuff, I think this is great. On so many levels, I think this is great. I would like to commend staff for coming up with this and looking into this. It ties into another thing that was brought up, which is, you know, the basic premise of this is they ain't making no more land. You know, where are you going to fit all this open space if you're trying to get, you know, higher density? One of my pet peeves has been the amount of parking that we require, and it's one of the things that I would like to look at, because everything we pave over with parking lot we can't have in buildings, or we can't have in open space or anything else. But I think this is a great start, and I'm absolutely in favor of this.
Any other questions or comments? I'm happy that we saw an area where we were maybe being too demanding, addressing it. All right, public hearing's now open. If one wants to speak for or against this, step on up here and talk to us.
Benny Collins, 302 West 2nd Street, Wendell. Good evening. I'm speaking in favor of this. One of the top areas of what's considered a great community, a great town, or a great city is in open space areas where people can congregate that live there. The gentleman back here a while ago was talking about, he gave us the dissertation about from the caveman up and the safety part of it. We're at a point today where without having areas where people that can get a chance to get to know their neighbors, and through all the growth that is coming our way, if again, I want to commend the staff for being proactive in this, because I see the second item of this as well being a deterrent, a possible deterrent of developers who would be desirable to our community to come in. This would, I'd have to take a strong look at it if I was trying to develop a property in that nature. But and if you don't believe what I'm saying, you can research it, and it is in one of the top 10 things that make a great town or a city in this country, is having the open space today. Thank y'all.
Anyone else? Public hearing is now closed.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the proposed text amendments to Chapter 7 of the UDO as it relates to open space requirements, please. next, both items.
One item, just for the fee schedule, we would also have to amend that unless we wanted to incorporate it into the text.
Can you amend your motion to include the fee schedule?
Yes, I'll amend my motion
And the fee schedule?
to include the adjustments to the fee schedule.
Okay.
Is that sufficient?
So we have a motion to adopt the proposed text amendments to Chapter 7 and amend our fee schedule to reflect the changes. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is an amendment to Chapter 14, Section 110 and 111. Chief Carter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. Back before you tonight, as this item had previously been tabled at our last September 11th meeting to be brought back this evening. We are continuing to conduct additional research after getting some feedback regarding Sections 110 and 111 of Chapter 14, which largely govern the possession and display of weapons on town properties, both in recreational settings and in traditional buildings. We continue to work with the Institute of Government as well as seeking feedback, and as we get more information, we hope to bring you a better product that will maybe satisfy some of the concerns that have previously been voiced. So with that in mind, we would ask that it be tabled until November 13th.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or objections to table until November 13th? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Item number 10, tree board update.
All right, Madam Mayor and Board, in July, Ms. Joy Hicks tendered her resignation from the tree board. That was accepted and acknowledged with a letter from the mayor. At our August 28th town board meeting, it was brought to the town board's attention at the direction of the town board. This item was noticed that there was a vacancy on the tree board. It was posted, oh, you're fine, posted on the town's Facebook, Twitter, website, downtown kiosks, and for that last week of advertisement, it was placed in our alert box on our town's webpage. The following application was received. We do have ballots if it is the pleasure of the board to use the ballots. This is a very active citizen advisory board, and it is because of this board's efforts that the town is able to host its Arbor Day celebrations with our area schools, and they are very active in assisting the town for our Tree City designation.
Right. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Duggan? I believe we have received an application. And Ms. Scoggins would like you all to vote on that application tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, if that's the pleasure of the board.
Suspense is killing me. Pins and needles. Pins and needles.
Okay, it looks like it's unanimous
Okay.
for Ms. Sheldon. Ms. Sheldon was at our last board meeting, and she apologized. She had a family commitment and could not be at this board meeting, but I'm sure she'll be at a future board meeting. She has expressed an interest in learning the business of the town.
As I've spoken with her a couple of times about it. Congratulations to her, and thank her for her willingness to serve. All right, item 10B.
Mayor, I need to recuse myself from this item. for conflict of interest.
Okay, do we need a motion for recusal?
We do.
Okay,
I'd like to do the same for reasons of conflict of interest, but I do have a question for our town attorney.
okay.
This resolution, is it legal the way it's written due to the fact we have not had a formal public hearing on the topic?
It doesn't require a public hearing.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to recuse Commissioner Carroll and Commissioner Meyer from this item.
We have a motion to recuse Commissioner Carroll and Commissioner Myrick from this item. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? All right. Yeah, why don't y'all have a seat right down there? Commissioner Joyner?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bring this resolution before you this evening, and I apologize for it not being noticed earlier. However, this is a somewhat constantly evolving situation with the Wake County Board of Commissioners and Wake County School System and their intent to acquire land along East Academy Street. I'm going to read the resolution, if that's appropriate, Madam Mayor.
Fine, go ahead.
So this will give you the understanding and the background of what we're discussing. Whereas on October 13th, 2016, Wake County Public School Systems staff held a meeting presenting plans of the expansion of Wendell Elementary to a group invited by Wake County Public School Systems staff. Whereas those plans called for the dramatic reconfiguration of Wendell Elementary School campus. Whereas one or more of those plans called for the demolition of the historic auditorium and gymnasium. Whereas those plans called for the acquisition of 1 to 4 historic homes by purchase or through eminent domain. Whereas the Wake County Board of Commissioners is tasked with the acquisition of land for the Wake County Public School System and has been asked to approve the acquisition that is identified in the plans presented by the Wake County Public School System staff in October of 2016. Whereas the Wendell Board of Commissioners is tasked with providing public safety services and various other tasks within the town's corporate limits and has passed comprehensive transportation, pedestrian, and land use plans. Whereas the Wendell Board of Commissioners have not been made aware of any plans other than those presented on October of 2016, whereas those plans for expansion do not consider the aforementioned Town of Wendell plans and can reasonably be expected to negatively impact and likely exacerbate the current traffic and transportation problems within Wendell, whereas the plans for expansion do not consider the position of the Wendell Board of Commissioners nor other affected groups within the Town of Wendell. Therefore, now it be resolved that the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners opposes the Wake County Board of Commissioners acquiring land for the Wake County Public School System for the immediate or future implementation of plans that will expand the Wendell Elementary School. Duly resolved this 9th day of October 2017. That is a very formal way of saying in October of 2016, landowners were given a request to come to Town Hall where they were shown a set of plans, actually shown a couple sets of plans to expand Wendell Elementary School. Several of those called for the demolition of the current site as well as expansion onto Thompson Field. You'll note that in between Thompson Field and the current site is a row of houses and property as well as Academy Street. At that time, several members expressed concerns. That plan was tabled for some time and has now been moved. We were made aware of this a couple weeks back. I sent an email last week, a letter opposing this to the county commissioners that was signed by all members currently in front of you. And I also spoke at the last county commission meeting, referenced this. The plans don't take into account, one, the opinion of the citizens of Wendell or this body. They don't take into account our transportation plan, and that area is certainly an area of concern in our transportation plan. And to be quite frank with you, Eastern Wake County for a long time, and Wendell specifically, has been given the leftovers from our countywide affiliates, be that the school system or the county. We've been told what we should and should not have, and we have accepted it. I'd argue that this is the town of Wendell saying we are a bright, growing community within Wake County, and we deserve the same, if not more, than other communities. We have not been, at no point in the past year has anyone said to the town board, what is your opinion on this? And that is certainly the biggest push for me. We need to be involved in the conversation of how things progress with our schools. Our PTA was not considered, our Historic Society was not considered, the Wendell Rams have not been consulted. There is a wide swath of community groups that have not been considered, and my hope is that by sending this resolution forward, we can request that consideration moving forward.
Commissioner Boyette?
I just would like to echo roughly 90% of what Commissioner Joyner said. While I don't agree with 100% of the stuff that's in this resolution, the basic gist of it is that the town of Wendell, the citizens of Wendell, have not been really consulted. You know, it was basically only made known to the property owners that sit in between current Wendell Elementary School and Thompson Field. I also went to the Wake County Board of Commissioners meeting, and when Ms. Betty Parker, who's with Facilities or whatever her title is, I'm not sure, when she went up there and was pressed on the issue by the Wake County Commissioners, who had some really good questions for her, you know, she said that the improvement of Wendell Elementary School is not even on their 7-year plan. I'm not familiar with their 7-year plan, but it seems to me that if they don't have any plans to improve the school for at least 7 years, then, you know, spending tens of thousands of dollars to buy property at this date and time doesn't seem like the best use of funds when the Wake County School Board seems to be constantly short of money and space for students. I would like to see Wendell Elementary School improved, especially the traffic situation that it causes on our main thoroughfare every day. You know, this is a personal project for me. I went there for 4 years. When I went there, it was 2nd through 5th grade, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there. When I went there, we all rode the bus. It was the rare student who came in a car, and that was almost exclusively because it was a magnet school, and a lot of those kids just came as car riders. But now it's a whole lot more popular. I don't know if it's by necessity or what the reason is, but the traffic situation there is bad and getting worse. And I find it hard to believe that a project that has been stated is not even slated for the next 7 years would have conceptual drawings showing the new school placed here, with this road moved here, moving the giant Wendell water tower was part of one of them, having to relocate that. I just find it hard to believe that they're planning 7 years out when, you know, they have a shortage of space for students today. And so you know, I'm going to vote for this resolution because I want to make sure that we let the county commissioners know that Wendell deserves and demands to be included in any discussion and planning of the school that sits in the middle of our town. I just want everyone to understand that we all want what's best for Wendell, we all want what's best for the school, and the only way we're going to get what's best is to have everybody involved. And I think if this is what it takes to make sure that everybody gets involved, then I'm in favor of it.
I also will speak in favor of this resolution, mainly from the points that my fellow commissioners have stated today. As a parent of a child at Wendell Elementary School, I sit through the carpool line each morning. I drop off. I'm in the school. I see what good our school is doing. I also see some of the frustrations that it can create with traffic problems. I think our school deserves the best. And you saw here tonight we had a teacher being representative. We had our principal, vice principal. We had students here. We had the parents here. We had a lot of support for our school in this town. And I think that Wendell deserves a voice, and I don't think this would be happening in other places, and I don't think it's going to be allowed to happen here. I don't care who buys the land, who purchases the land, but we deserve to have a say-so in this one, and they haven't given us that say-so, and they've said they've given us that say-so, but they haven't. They continue to do what they please to do, yeah, I agree. I think our school deserves the best, and I think our town, like Commissioner Boyd said, for a school that's located right in the heart of our town, the town needs to have a say-so in what happens here and where the development takes up, and needs to look at our transportation plans we've improved and our pedestrian plans we've improved. And so for those facts, I'll be in support as well.
Well, for my 2 cents, I have an opinion about it. I've had several conversations with Wake County Public Schools, Ms. Betty Parker. We've been out and toured the school. We've heard conversations about we might do this, we might do that. And this was all quite some time ago. The plan was to expand over onto Thompson Field. What seemed to me to be they presented us with several options. What seemed to be their most the option they were really trying to sell was to move the homes on Academy Street or tear them down and expand onto Thompson Field. I have some information at home. I don't have it with me tonight. But essentially, when a new elementary school is built in Wake County, the site planning that takes place, they look for 20 to 25 acres for an elementary school. Well, Thompson Field is about 4-ish. If you add the houses on Academy Street, that adds a little 4-ish, 5 more. And if you then, which this was never really discussed, add the homes that back up to Thompson Field from Marshburn to get a great big lot, that's 4-ish or 5 more acres. We're still considerably short of what they were going to do. They had some real pretty drawings that they had done up. They weren't done by an architect, but they were drawn by hand, and they were their best ability to have something of an official capacity. And the playground at the elementary school was a big place, grassy place in the middle of the bus line. So you were going to have to cross the street to get to, or a traffic area to get to that. I've never thought it was a good idea. We expressed to them this was not a good idea. I am sick and tired of Wendell getting what's left over at the end of the day. Sick and tired of it. You can absolutely bet your bottom dollar that they would not be going to other towns in Wake County and just buying land and building schools and no one at the town knowing anything about it. And they need to understand that in Wendell, we're not going to just go along to get along anymore. I'll be at that next meeting. I urge anybody who is interested to do the same. Unfortunately, I was out of town at the previous one, and Commissioner Joyner went on our behalf. They need to take into consideration the traffic problems that we have currently, moving it back 1 block on the little roads that, one of those roads I don't even know can accommodate 2-way traffic, much less a school bus. They haven't considered our traffic plan, our pedestrian plan. They aren't considering anything other than the fact that they want to tear down the water tower, potentially move some of the last few historic homes that we have in our town. And I just have vehement objection to it. I don't know why they don't just choose a site plan. I've suggested numerous ones to them, and put the school there and let us have something on the same caliber that other communities have. So that being said, is there a motion for this?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion to adopt this resolution of opposing the land acquisition. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Wonderful.
We get a motion to bring the commissioners back.
Yeah,
So we have-
motion to let them come back out of the audience.
So moved.
All right, all in favor, let them come back.
Aye.
Item number 11 is our snapshot. I'm going to take a quick look at it. Our meeting's running kind of long tonight. Real quickly, the town square signage, the sign has not been replaced, but we did remove the poles and so forth. We want to leave this on here until we get a sign. Where do we stand on a sign out there, Ms. Pine?
That's something we need to work with the sign company to
Okay.
look at what we're wanting, and it may be even that we want to put it at a different location. That may not necessarily be where we want it to put it back there on the
think
side.
Definitely, maybe at the corner. Okay. All right. And the railroad tracks at Hollybrook, has that repair been made? The railroad, it has not?
They were assessing it, they have not
Okay.
gotten back to me where
All
they're
right.
assessing.
I was just trying to get things off of here. Okay. Does anyone else have a question or comment about the snapshot? Anything you'd like to add? We'll be wrapping up the Cardiff soon. I know we went over onto another page, so that'll shrink it back down a little bit.
And this may not need to be added to the snapshot, it may need to be added to the snapshot. I know we discussed earlier this year, maybe last year, the locking of the town bathrooms that are located in the park at each evening, and the opening of them each morning. We can double check that that's being done.
Okay. I know the chain is down right now because things are getting delivered early in the morning before staff is there, or late in the day after staff has left.
My concern isn't so much the chain as is the bathrooms just being
Bathrooms,
locked.
okay. Ms. Piner, can you check on that? Let's add that, hear from that next time. All right, item number 12 is update on board committees by town board meetings. Joiner, the Fire Advisory Board.
Madam Mayor, we met last Thursday and reviewed the fire department's audit. It came back clean. We accepted that audit and discussed some other financial matters with the fire department.
All right. I attended the Triangle J Conference in Clayton. The topics were mostly relating to closing the divide between the urban and rural areas. I think Wendell sits in a unique position. We're urban in that we're in Wake County, but we're really rural. So that puts us in a unique position. We discussed that actually a little bit. I attended several interesting breakout sessions about economic development. Various communities shared their experiences, things that had worked for them, things that did not. One thing that was real interesting to me is a lot of the things that were working were things that we were already doing. So if nothing else, I got a lot of validation that we're on the right path. So, all right. Item number 13, Commissioner's Report. Start with Commissioner Carroll.
So I get to beat everybody to the punch and congratulate the staff and everybody involved with the Harvest Festival. If you didn't get a chance to go, make sure you do next year. It was a great turnout, great time. And also would like to congratulate Mr. Hennett on his award. Anybody that knows me knows I love history, more especially historic preservation. And it's just exciting to know that once again Wendell's on the map, being recognized for something that great that we've done as a community or as an individual. Either way, we're represented well, so I appreciate that.
I also attended the Triangle J Regional Summit for a short afternoon session where I was honored to present an award to our mayor for the Citizens Award for her work and her service that she does to this town. That I know goes recognized by many of our citizens, but now we've got to finally kind of put out front in front of the whole region and brag about her. So, and well deserved too. And also, like I said, great Harvest Festival again. Thanks to all the public works and parks and town staff and everybody and police who busted tail all weekend long to make it successful.
Commissioner Maverick?
Yes, I don't think we can compliment the town staff, public works, our police, Parks and Rec enough. It was a fantastic festival this year. And if there was any hiccups in the planning, you would have never known it. So Chamber of Commerce did a fantastic job as well. And I was talking with a couple from Pennsylvania last night. They just happened to be down here on vacation. They had bought a home here in Wendell. They still have 4 or 5 more years of work up in Pennsylvania, then they're retiring here. And they were talking about how fantastic the festival was, so. But anyway, great job by everybody.
Commissioner Boyette?
Yes, I would also just like to echo what everyone else meant to say, which was, how about that Wolfpack beating Louisville? I'm sure it slipped your mind with how awesome the Harvest Festival was. The Harvest Festival was great. I think it went off without a hitch as far as I'm concerned, but that's because my little girl goes down for a nap at noon and I didn't get rained on. You know, aside from the rain, I think it went great. The vendors seem to get better and better every year. The crowds seem to get higher, you know, more numerous every year. And the chamber really does a great job putting it on. I think a lot of people don't realize that, is that, you know, the Harvest Festival is the chamber's doing. And the town, you know, we help out with staff and things like that, but they really take the lead on a lot of the planning stuff. Which brings up a good point. If we want this to continue to grow, I think there are some minor changes that we might make to the town square to improve our ability to have perhaps more vendors and more varied vendors. And so it's something I would like to take a look at going forward is, are there any improvements need to be made to any of the utilities or anything out there? And you know, when do we need to look at those things and make some improvements so that we're not hamstringing ourselves based on space requirements, you know, looking at parking and getting more people involved. And I'd also like to remind everybody that we're less than a month away from the election, and I'd like to remind everybody to make sure you go and vote first Tuesday in November.
Commissioner Joyner?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to like to echo, obviously, what everyone has said about the Harvest Festival, specifically to the Chamber of Commerce and our staff on everything that they did. A couple months back, we had a countywide competition for steps where we were monitoring employees' steps and competing with other areas. I would argue that if we could put a pedometer on Regina Harmon and Chief Carter during the Harvest Festival, we could have beaten everyone 3 counties around. It was borderline comical because every time I walked somewhere, one of the 2 of them was passing me going in another direction. I love seeing all of the kids involved and out there. There seemed to constantly be something that they were either coming from or going to, and that was also a good thing. And before I get to the rest of my comments, I want to highlight, many of you may know my wife is a teacher in town, or excuse me, in Knightdale, teaches kids from town, and they're currently learning their government unit. This was a test question given to the children today. Why do you think cities have different laws? Support your answer with discussion. The answer to this, which I would venture to say is a direct result of this board's leadership, is cities have different laws because in Raleigh they have lots of traffic and in Wendell they have golf carts. I would like to offer that is that if the children notice, it must be a good thing. And all in all good. I have been vocal in public since October of last year about the school board's plan, and I want folks to understand that, and I've said it in the past, if you are doing something that benefits Wendell, I will be your biggest advocate, and I will fight for you tooth and nail, and if I feel like you are doing something that is not in the best interest of Wendell, then I will be your biggest opponent. And on this issue, I feel like until Wendell is granted a seat at the table and Wendell's children are treated in the same manner that they would be if they were living in Cary or Apex or elsewhere, that it is my job to stand in the gap and ensure that until we get what is due to us, that nothing else happens. But I do want to say that we have, and I have personally reached out to members of the county commission as well as members of the school board and are working on things. And in all honesty, this resolution, in my mind, was sent forward to help them understand in a formal way our opinion. We can't be heard unless we speak up, and that's what that was about. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Since we last met, I attended the K-12 Education Workshop Group meeting. This is a group I've been going to for a few years now. Their focus is to do things to enhance their schools in Wendell. It's expanding now to do Wendell, Knightdale, Zebulon, and be one group, and be Eastern Wake County. This last time we met at Knightdale High School. We previously met at Wendell Middle, and East Wake High School, so it's kind of floating around a little bit. The Pledge of Allegiance and the recognition of the teacher is something that has come from that, and we kind of led the charge with that. To me, that's an easy thing. It's cheap and free, and it's nice to thank people for doing kind things for our children, so, and recognize children who are doing well in school. There are other things that are being planned by this group that are larger things, and I think it's important for Wendell to be a part of that, so I attend those. I also attended the Harvest Festival, which was fantastic. I really, again, I'll say it again, I want to thank Regina Harmon and the Chamber of Commerce for their hard work. They really, really worked hard. Our town staff worked hard. Every single employee for the town of Wendell was called to assist in some fashion during the planning of the Harvest Festival. So it's a wonderful event for our town. There were people here from all over, and if you didn't go, you should go next year. It's a fantastic event, and I was really proud of our town, especially proud of our town citizens that day. I want to remind you that Friday, October 13th is the last day that I'm accepting nominations for the Mayor's Award. So if there's someone that you want to nominate, there's a form on the town website, and I urge you to please do that. We have received a little stack, but won't be making a decision until that deadline. Also, that same Friday is the last day that you can register for the upcoming November 7th election. So if you're new to the area and you have not registered to vote, you have a little bit more time. Please take care of that. It's important. Everybody doesn't get to. It's a privilege. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we're adjourned.